Welcome everyone to the final faculty forum for our Vice President of Academic Affairs search. We have our third candidate here today, and so thanks everyone for coming, and we want to thank our candidate, Dr. Christopher Dyer, for joining us. Also, we want to thank Wingspan, Suzanne and Wingspan, for streaming this live as she's done for the last 3 days. And it's a really nice benefit to be able to give this to our faculty that are not on campus at the time. What we'll do again is we'll give Dr. Dyer a few moments to speak, introduce himself, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. And please, again, state your name and what you do here at the college, how long you've been here, so Dr. Dyer can kind of get a sense of who you are and also give the people that are watching it through the streaming an idea of who's asking the question. And then we'll move on from there. I will highlight a few of Dr. Dyer's accomplishments, and it's a laundry list of stuff, so I won't take the whole time doing that, but just a quick introduction here. Oh, and by the way, I've got my iPad up here. I'm using technology, so I will be checking email as they come in from people that may be watching this streaming to ask questions of Dr. Dyer as we're going through the forum. Dr. Dyer comes to us from currently his position as Dean of Academic Affairs at Missouri State University West Plains, which is dead center south of Missouri in the heart of the Ozarks. And he comes to us with a wealth of academic administration experience, over 10 years, and over 25 years as an educator. And he is a trained applied anthropologist, and his background is in that and many other things. Also has a very diverse experience culturally, been to many different countries doing research and education, and he also has served as a dean or similar capacity at other institutions such as Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio, Texas, Mount Olive College, North Carolina, and the School for Field Studies, which is kind of a unique privately funded institution where students get the opportunity to go abroad and do all kinds of research and field studies, and he served as an academic officer there. And he has a Bachelor of Science in Fishery Biology, Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology, both from the University of Arizona, Master of Science in Marine Biology from the University of Alabama, and a Master of Arts and a PhD in Anthropology from Arizona State University. So he told us earlier at breakfast that he's originally from Akron, Ohio, but very early on transplanted to Arizona, so he's a desert rat, I believe you said, and loves the West. A couple other things here. I'm going to keep bragging about him a little bit more. Has received numerous research grants, which include National Science Foundation, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, National Hazard Center, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the Organization of American States, Missouri Council for the Humanities, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the Kate B. Reynolds Charitable Trust. And along with his extensive research in the U.S., which has involved human ecosystem modeling and disaster assessment, a lot of disaster assessment research and modeling. He has directed research teams in 17 countries, I think it's even more than that maybe, including Middle America, the Caribbean, Kenya, and the Philippines. So a breadth of knowledge and experience. He's culturally and linguistically fluent in Spanish, and among his many publications, he has received an award from a journal called the Sociological Spectrum in 1992 for his paper on the social disruption that the Exxon Valdez oil spill caused for the native Alaskans in that area. And another cool thing he's done, which is kind of dear to my heart, is he spearheaded a project at Mount Olive, I believe, the Fit by Design, was that
Fitness by Design.
Fitness by Design, where he brought together healthcare industries, wellness centers, school districts, physical therapy centers, things like that, and brought the community together for an overall fitness awareness and principles to help the community become more fit. So without further ado, I introduce Dr. Christopher Dyer.
Thank you. I wonder who he's talking about. I guess when you do a lot of different things, you do them one at a time, so you don't remember them all. So I'm Dr. Christopher Dyer. I'm presently the Dean and Chief Academic Officer at MSU West Plains. I've been administering for approximately 10 years and taught at, been a student at, and administered in two-year institutions. Come from a family of educators. My father was the first faculty at Scottsdale Community College in the Division of Fine Arts there, chairman of that. I'm an applied anthropologist. I have a background in community development, corporate engagement, economic development, over $30 million in grants, and worked in 21 different countries, actually, on a variety of different projects. They asked me why. Well, why do you want this job? MSU West Plains is a wonderful place. It's an outstanding institution. We've been identified by the Aspen Institute the last 2 years in a row as one of the top 10% in the country of two-year institutions, and we're actually moved to the next round towards the finals. That will be cool. But we're resource limited. We are populational limited. This is a great opportunity for me because you are poised for success at this institution. You have new leadership, a new future, and you are very comprehensive. You have all the quality education, community outreach, workforce development, creative dynamic here that makes it attractive to someone like me. So it's something like that I would like to be a part of and like to be involved in developing. And that's what applied anthropologists do. We develop things. We work with communities. We use knowledge to improve the human condition. So this is a place, I think, where I can grow, where I can learn, where I can be part of a comprehensive process of institutional building and part of a wonderful team of educators, many of whom I think have been dedicated for this place for, let's see, we counted maybe at least 150 years this morning in the initial breakfast meeting. So thank you very much, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Preguntas. Oh, I forgot to say buenos días. Muy buenos días todos. Okay. Good morning. Yes.
I'm Dave Markham, Government Studies instructor here at LCCC. I'm looking at the resume that was published on our website, and you alluded to this and actually explicitly talked about this in your opening remarks, that you have background in human ecosystem modeling. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering how that experience, how those skills, how you would apply that knowledge to integrating the academic side of things here at LCCC with the workforce development side of things here, which is going to be one of your big challenges if you do get the job.
Yeah. Excellent question. So the question is how you integrate the workforce development with the academics. And that's a very, very significant question in terms of what happens when someone graduates. What are the skills that they need? What is the society state in terms of change? How would you do that? From an applied anthropological perspective or ecological perspective, you have to know what's being demanded out there. What are the career pipelines and things that people are looking for? From the technological side, what are the basic skills that you need? But if you want to, in fact, grow in your position and grow beyond simply a technical role, you need to have the other component. That being the liberal arts, that being the soft skills, the reading, the writing, oral presentation, team building. That has to be part of your resume. And you get that best, I think, reflectively through a strong liberal arts general educational background. Now, from what has been described here, we have a process of divergence where, through no one's fault, there's just been a process where they're split apart. You have over here the VOTEC workforce development piece, and then the general education student transfer piece over here. The goal, I understand, is to bring these more back together, and there's an agreement on both sides. I think the key is to think about what do we want to create in the end? What is that student going to look like? And I have a term that I like to use, and I call it adaptive learners. An adaptive learner is somebody who is very good at accepting and adapting to change. They can modify what needs to be done based upon what's happening in the world around them. So adaptive learners have skill sets from both sides. So bringing those together will involve a lot of listening, a lot of conversations with the parties involved, a lot of thinking across the curriculum. In some cases, maybe even developing team-taught programs where they're teaching English, but they're using workforce development criteria and problems to solve, and then they're writing to those. So basically, my role to start out with is going to be a very active listener to pull together the members of that group to create a team that's willing to work hard, roll up their sleeves, and create a process where we can cross the streams to create these adaptive learners. Now, I think a piece of that might get lost in all this is the fact that it has to be both ways. There are things over here that can influence this, and like I mentioned, having writing assignments that are influenced by what are the skill sets. So making it relevant. A student goes into workforce development because of an interest in a particular area, an interest in a particular career. Well, how do you meld that with these developmental skills that are basic general education? I think to do that, you think about ways to team teach, to develop cohorts where you're teaching together in one sequence after another, and where you're merging assignments in the syllabus that reflect the workforce and that are present over here. So in terms of doing that and starting that, that's how I would begin that and carry it out. However, just to make the case clear, I can come in here and say, oh, we should do this, but that's not good leadership, because coming in here and saying, oh, we're going to do this is like saying, oh, coming here unbeknownst to say, we're going to start a program, wind energy, because it was really blowing when I drove up here. Okay? And I missed the big turbine thing. I might wander out and say, what is this, a piece of an anchor or something? You know? So it's a matter of understanding the context, doing due diligence, and doing an awful lot of listening, gathering the facts. And I would rely on that team, because I really believe in primary work relationships, to come together working with me to create that dynamic where you can bring those two areas together and have effective outcomes and create adaptive learners.
I'm Rosalind Shalinsky, and I teach journalism. I have a scenario for you, all right? Let's say we have an art gallery on campus, and it is curated by a faculty member, and professional artists are brought in of all media. The person puts on a lecture, but then it's up for a month so that the students can go in there and so forth. One of the exhibits is a little on the erotic side. And we have a donor for an upcoming building who's upset about it and has called the president. And so now the president has called you. What do you do?
Well, what you should have done should have already happened. If it's gotten that far, then you missed something. If you're going to have something that creates controversy, you want to know what kind of controversy it might create, and then thinking carefully about your audience or your donors and supporters. Is it okay with them? Would it be okay with them? So you need to understand the values of your audience and of where you are. That's a cultural phenomenon. You need to understand those value systems, particularly those who are donating, and you want them to be sustained donors. You don't want to turn them away from giving to the institution. So how I would do that is I would very early on, if in fact that was going to be the venue, arrange to have a conversation with the artist and or artists. And in that conversation, talk about their art and potential issues, and maybe then even in fact arrange a luncheon where the donors and the potential people who might, will be doing the art come together in a common and this informal forum and talk about the creative process and what their art represents to them and show examples of it. Now, then that will give them a forum to discuss this with someone who might not agree with it, and they can have a chance to answer those questions. I think by giving that forum, you may not completely satisfy that donor, but at least they'll have had a voice, a preemptive voice, in stating what they think about it. And that's the whole purpose of art, is to create discourse and ideas and conversation. and disagreement. It's a good thing. It's part of the educational process, it's part of what we would like to see in an active, dynamic campus. That's what I would try to do and see if, in fact, that would allow then the thing to proceed. Make sure you have lots of media and lots of press proactively who are aware of what's going on. If you can get some radio spots for the artists and maybe some stuff in the local newspaper would also be beneficial. That's how I would approach that.
Hi, Dr. Dyer. Jeff Schmidl again. I teach economics and finance here. I think if you were to ask faculty what they were looking for in an academic VP, they would tell you that they want somebody who's going to advocate for academics with a focus on academic excellence. And at this institution, there's quite frankly been a challenge with that. You're dealing with the higher administration. There's only one academic officer, and the rest of the administration has limited academic backgrounds. And so just discuss how you would go about that, advocating for academics with a focus on academic excellence.
That's an excellent question. Focusing on academic excellence is an exercise that starts at the trenches. One of the things that I've always done, and it's been part of the way I administer, is to connect and develop social networking and relationships with every single faculty person. That doesn't mean that I'm going out and having beer with everyone every night, but I need to know, well, some of them maybe we have beer, I don't know what kind of beer you got, we'll have to find out. Some of them, that may have more focused issues than others, but the idea is to get to know you, to develop discussional portfolios and find out what the interests are, what the areas and the strengths and weaknesses are of the faculty, and then be a voice for those people, all of you together. So I really do believe in primary work relationships, and one of my fundamental ways to advance excellence and quality in programs is to listen, and to listen to all the faculty and the faculty voices. Without the faculty, we can't move forward, and we can't do things. That's the intellectual core of the institution. If we're good or bad, that is it. So you need to understand it, and you need, once you've had those discussions, that you're out here, that you can advocate through those discussions for resources, for personnel, for the maintenance of quality, for value additions, for additional staff. And you can make it stick because you've done your homework back here, so you can be effective out here. That's a very important part. It's important for me, and it's absolutely essential that I'm a voice for the faculty and I can express a clear understanding of their thinking, their motivations, their focus, and their ideas and dreams to the president and other administrators, as well as the board of governors. That's a critical part of my role as I see it, is to be that good communicator. And I am very much a person who, in that regard, has an open door, open mind policy. I mean, I have my days scheduled. I'll tell you, my days rarely follow my schedule, except when there's very significant meetings, because people are constantly flowing through my office. Students and faculty and some staff who know that Dr. Dyer has a policy, JDI. Do you know what that stands for? No, just do it. You got to know the secret handshake though too. So, it's something you learn through time. And so the productivity goes up for everyone. But having a voice means talking to people, conversing with them, and making sure that what you're expressing represents that reality. Again, it's not coming in with an agenda and telling the faculty what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, or how I'm going to tell them what to do. I don't believe that's the way to manage. I've never done it that way. As an anthropologist, you can't do that way. For example, if you want to go into a community, you have to do it in a way that's very sensitive to what's happening there, who the stakeholders are, what the problems and issues are, what they know, what they don't know, what their prejudices are. And without that understanding, you are zero. Let me tell you a little story about that. I was in Alvarado, Mexico, doing my doctorate with Mexican fishermen, pescadores, in 3 communities. And I wanted to understand the dynamics of family, so I had to get the female perspective. Well, if anyone has ever worked in Latin America, and you're a male, and you're in a community, you know, talking to women is not easy, particularly their husbands don't want you to talk to them. You know, even when they're out at sea and the guy in the room who's watching you is guarding someone who's in their late 60s and has no teeth. They're still protecting their honor. It's just, that was kind of an opener to me, a 24-year-old PhD student doing this, and you realize that you have to figure out ways to talk to people, and you have to do it with a great deal of respect. You have to build that trust. That's a very important piece, to build that trust. And I did that by saying, well, I'm not like a doctor or a priest. Eventually, I got there and I talked to everybody. But you really do have to talk to everybody and make sure you understand the lay of the land. If you don't, then you're going to make a lot of mistakes and cause problems rather than create solutions.
Along those same lines, there's a question here that came in via email prior to this forum. What are your thoughts about faculty development? Kind of continuing on with what
Thoughts on faculty
Yeah.
development. Ongoing, continuous, I think it's a critical piece of having a vibrant institution. The faculty are on the forefront of education. Education is a moving target. The teaching technologies are a moving target. The areas of expertise are constantly fluctuating. So people need to be given opportunities to develop professionally. If we're introducing new technologies, new teaching techniques, we have new assessment demands, both internally and externally. We have to be prepared for those. The only way to do that is faculty development. I'm a very strong advocate of faculty development at my institution where I'm presently. I push and I push and I push. For those faculty who maybe not go out, we've even instituted cost sharing where their allotment of faculty development funds can be given to someone in their academic unit, and then they're expected that if this person goes out, they'll bring something back that will benefit not only the unit, but maybe the larger institution as well. So faculty development, I think, is a core to productivity and success in academics and maintaining quality educational standards.
My name is Mary Guthrie. I'm an adjunct English instructor. Obviously, one of the big burning issues now in second, two-year colleges is the retention and graduation, increasing those rates. How do you propose to do something like that?
The
Probably
question,
win the Nobel Prize if you came up with the right answer. But.
Oh, wow, I can't wait. Do they pay money for that? Lots. That would be good. We could put it into a mutual fund. Retention and graduation is a bugaboo. It plagues all two-year institutions. When we have open access, we know that we're going to have failure. Students are going to come in unprepared for the college experience, and some of them are not going to get through. It's the nature of the world, you know, that we live in, and it has a lot to do with their preparation, their personalities, things that they encounter, and people that they encounter on the way. What I have done in regard to retention and graduation is to work with a very dedicated team and to do an assessment, due diligence across the country of best practices. Read, read, read. Find out what works, what doesn't, and then take what we have, build on our strengths, and create programs that will increase retention. Part of that, though, starts well before we get the students. So part of our plan, and the plan I've instituted, has to do not with the word retention, but the words college readiness. Is that student ready to walk in the door? So in terms of college readiness, we've developed a program just this last year and a half with my Title III director to bring faculty who teach the basic skills in their high schools onto our campus to interface with our basic skill faculty and to make sure that the skills that are being taught here and the skills that are being taught here are in convergence, to make sure that they're not going to be blamed by the state for not having their students ready, which happens to them. The superintendents have told me this. So I'm trying to make sure this doesn't happen. We've been very successful at that starting out. And I'm going to have continuous now college readiness workshops that will go on every single year as in-service days on the campus with those high school instructors. So that's one piece, a piece. Another piece is getting students ready in middle school and getting them to think about the concept of college and to think about what they want to do with their lives. On our end here, what we're doing is we're really priming up the career pathways training intrusive assessment and advising and bringing those together so they work as part of one activity. When that student hits that advisor has a whole tool set of things that they're going to relay to that student and have not just a meeting but multiple meetings. So if you've gone and you had a student come into your office and that student has been told, take this class, and this class, thank you very much, goodbye, you have failed at your job. Because what we want to happen is that we want that person, that advisor, to get to know that student, to delve a little bit into their strengths and weaknesses, which we'll also do with some standard surveys and testing, to find out something about their background and what they want or can imagine to do with their lives and how our curriculum fits that. And then to advise them on what options and possibilities there are out there for them to flow into. And let them know something about it because we've studied it and we can relay it. So that's one of the things we also do. Also response in terms of pedagogy and andragogy for students, youth, and adults. What kinds of tools do we have out there that are forthcoming, that are technologically sophisticated? I'll use the example this morning about our change in math. We have 70% of our students where I am who come in and they need at least one developmental course. In my mind, that's way too much for an open access. But we're in a very poor area, 11th Forest Congressional District in the United States, and there's a lack of good math and science instructors out in the rural sectors there. So what do? Is we bring those students in and we think about how can we get you ready to proceed on. It's, say, with math. So we start with math. We looked at best practices, and fortunately, right next door, Jackson State, they had some best practices using modular programs to teach math. We took our introductory math, we broke it down into 2 components, and we modularized it. We added in-house computer advisors. We set up, and we sacrificed a couple of rooms and turned them into computer labs, and we got those students to take a modular step approach to math based upon self-pacing with help. The impact was, for that population pre-Emporium model, 27% of our students coming in initially would pass and flow out of that into the introductory math. Only 27%. Post-modular program, 63%. That's how you do it. You use technology, you understand the students, you set up programs that work for them, and you become a very good intrusive advisor. And you know that builds incredible self-esteem and a sense of accomplishment. And those students stay. If they get through that early course, they will stay. And that's the point. Keep them in the program till the very end.
Buenos días, Dr. Dyer.
Buenos días, ¿cómo estamos? ¿Bien?
Muy bien, gracias.
Ya.
Soy Juan Antonio Bernabeu y soy uno de los instructores para los idiomas modernos. ¿Sí?
He teaches Spanish. He's one of their instructors, that's right.
Good. One of the issues we face as faculty is sometimes a tremendous amount of red tape, especially to create or produce new courses and programs.
Mhm.
You talk about your experience going abroad and the research. I'm going in that direction as well. So what will you do personally to help us, faculty, to deal with such an issue in our institution?
We're talking about then steps and policies and procedures that get in the way of effectiveness of delivering institutional or educational products. That's one of your, I think, pillars in your mission statement, right? In your visioning statement going forward. That's one of the things that your long-range study is built on. So you've got that piece in there about increasing efficiency and effectiveness of your institution. It's within the realm and the responsibility of this person to look at those policies and procedures with the faculty and identify those problem areas that slow things down. I was telling someone earlier, I'm not about having lots of meetings. Because when I have a meeting, people get to learn that what I want to happen after that meeting is an action. If I'm just meeting for the sake of meeting, I want to be able to look at critical things and figure out, okay, how are we going to change this? Who do we need to go to? How do we get it there? What are we going to say? And then do it. Last part, JDI. Okay, do it. So if that's a priority and identified as a priority, let's say through faculty senate, through people who want to develop curriculum. Do you have a curriculum committee, for example? That's faculty driven. Yes? Okay, there you go. Then let's have those discussions, and let's have them early and often, and work our way up to and present this to the president, who seems to me that someone who has got an open mind, and talk about ways to do it better, ways to cut out steps, ways to streamline and simplify. But make sure, of course, that we don't remove those checks and balances along the way. If we're going to start a program, will we have any students? If we're going to start a program, will we market effectively? If we're going to start a program, do we have the human resources to carry it out? And if we're going to start a program, do we have the budgetary resources? Do we need to shift priorities and move money from one program that maybe is underperforming to another, which we imagine could, in fact, create more opportunities for students and increase enrollment? So you've got to have those questions and think about them, get those answered, and then you can move on. But I'm all about, this is a job. It says be creative, be a dynamic, and be a change leader. I intend to do that.
Thanks, Trent. Welcome to Cheyenne, Dr. Dyer. My name's
Thank you very much. It's
My
great
name's
to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. My name is Warren Lemerick. I'm in mathematics here, and being here for going 19 years now, I've seen a trend here. As a member of the faculty here, we've seen a disproportionate growth in a number of staff and administrative positions, where we've seen a real stagnant growth in faculty positions. I'm sure that's something, I think that's, at least from my understanding, it's not just isolated here at LCCC. We've also seen over the past several years some staff positions, evolve into administrative positions, basically going unchecked as well. I'd like to know your position on that, what you feel, what you would do for faculty, how you would advocate for more full-time faculty positions. And to add on to that, please, if I may, and again, I think this is a nationwide trend. We do see a lot of growing proportion of adjunct compared to the full-time faculty. And again, we know we have great adjunct, and we are very grateful to have some really good adjunct here. We still think this is a concern. And how would you address both of those, please?
Okay, so we're talking about, first of all, an increase proportionately in the upper strata and moving staff indiscriminately into administrative roles and having that maybe more top-heavy than it's been in the past. Yes?
Yeah, and just a sheer disproportionate growth in staff and administrative positions.
Yeah, versus the faculty population.
Correct, sir.
Which is where the core of activity, those are the people who directly serve the clients, who are on the front line with students. Okay, that is an important question which should, I think, be part of an open discussion. There should be forums for this. We should not only engage people from the community, but here and say, we would like to increase the number of faculty. We have these programs and these needs. What is your opinion about that? And bring the administration into it. And then at that point, well, then where do we get those resources? What changes and sacrifices are we going to make to increase faculty? I think that gets back to the other question, though, about introducing new programs. New faculty come with new programs. And how do you do that? Or are you identifying areas like English, for example, where you're underserved? You don't have enough, in your opinion, full-time faculty that cover the breadth and depth of what's needed for a modern student today to succeed. That gets back to the other question that we had about the merger of workforce technology and the liberal arts. It may be that we need more people here because we are bringing them back in, increasing the offerings or creating new offerings so they can be effective. So we can make cases in multiple ways for increasing faculty. The way to do that is to recognize the market, what are the needs out there, and what can we do to best serve students. So instead of take it off the plate and think about the student as the focus and the program and career and transformation as the issue, then how do we serve them? And that would probably mean new faculty, I would imagine. I mean, when I think about, I have plenty of ideas about curriculum that could evolve here, but that's not the point for me, is to talk to you and see what you think I might share those ideas with you, and you might have a common idea how to grow that. But we have to be able to come to a consensus and make a case, and make a very strong case, and make a case internally as well as externally. Now that means, of course, that the upper leadership, the leadership in general, have to agree that this is a track we are going to go down. I can't go out there by myself and simply do these things. I have to work carefully with Dr. Schaefer as a team to do these things. But that also means having brought to him and having been well informed by the faculty of both their needs and concerns about how they fill these roles, how they develop their curriculum, the fact that they feel we're just not getting enough folks in there. Now that also has an impact from the funding structure and the ways the state allocates money to each one of the 7 institutions in the state of Wyoming. But given that we serve 23% of the population, we can make a pretty good case, I would imagine, for increasing people in areas where there are going to be folks coming in. Let's take an example. Let's say we have a company, X, and it's coming into this area, and we can proactively determine these are their workforce needs. And we might even market that as part of a state agenda out there to bring that company here and say, and if you come, proactively, we'll be able to prepare a workforce who have these skills with LCCC. That means you have to have faculty who can do that. And if you have faculty who can do that, you also need to know what kind of load situation is that going to create if you're going to add that to this faculty member's plate. Or do we need new faculty to add so we can do that? If we're going to be change agents and we're going to be effective at creating a responsive institution to what's happening out there, we need to have new faculty, and we need to have them now, and we need to continue to have them as we adapt to the surrounding environment. And that's, I've been an advocate of that everywhere I've been. I've been very successful at growing faculty because I've been able to make the case using inside and outside information marketing and finding some very strong faculty leaders who will step up and say, yes, we support this. Thank you. That's a very good question.
Hold on. I'll ask another question here that was submitted beforehand, kind of switching gears here. What is your experience with Phi Theta Kappa?
The Honor Society, yes.
Yes.
Interestingly, we had a situation with Phi Theta Kappa where we had a program at Mount Olive College, and every year we would go on field trips, and these would be international field trips. We would go to England, we would go to Greece, New York. Hey, for them, they'd never left town. They'd never been north of the Neuse River. So going to New York was a cultural. It was another world. It was another world. So anyway, I was in charge of the honors program and the programming of the various curricula involved with that, plus working with the directors who changed and rotated with their faculty who'd served 3-year positions to identify where they were going to go. Well, so I had an ongoing experience in the management of these programs and their growth and the fiscal management of them and coming up with creative ways, particularly for the students if they're traveling, to get funding. Because a lot of these students, even though they were good students, didn't have money. And that's a problem here. What if we want to send students to Mykonos, okay? And we're going to do a tour of the Greek islands and see Delos, where Apollo was born. What if we're going to do that? We want to do that. How do the students get the money to do that? So coming up with strategies both from the community, from corporate support, through public service, learning activities, and having them set up savings accounts that we would put money into, that's something that we did. An example of activity that I actually did was we went to Greece, and we did the tour of the islands because the faculty that was supposed to go opted out at the last minute for health reasons. She simply couldn't make it. So I directed the tour, and we had a wonderful time. We went all over Greece. I gave lectures when I could, but I found out in certain places they don't let you lecture because that's their job. So if you're lecturing, that's illegal. So you can't. So I'd be talking to my students at the dock in Delos, and all of a sudden this person comes up in the uniform and says, "You cannot tell them these things. You cannot lecture to them." We do that. Okay, so I had to kind of break them up when we got to the museum in small groups and say, well, you stand over there and you stand over here. And when I get to those Etruscan, pottery, then we'll talk like, in hushed voices. And then I'll come over here. It was kind of comic, but it worked. And at the end, we did a wonderful thing. I thought these honor students were like, very theatrical, thespian kind of types, but they wouldn't. I wanted them to, I was going to write a play with them, and they were going to perform it about Greek culture as their final topic for their honors course. And they were afraid to do it. So I started writing the play, The Boy of Delos. It was pretty cool, actually. And it was all done, and they still didn't want to do it, so I said, okay, what if you created Muppets kind of thing, puppets, okay? And you designed them and everything. It's like there was a griffin, which was a monster, and a princess, and the goat boy who had a deformed leg. So they, in fact, out of wood, designed all of these puppets and built a stage and a set and everything and did it with spotlights and performed it. It was great fun. But yeah, I think that's a very important part of institutional culture. I think it needs resources, whether internal or external, to grow. And it certainly allows the students who go through that program to be ambassadors for those experiences and bring them back to benefit the other students and the rest of the institutional community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In Wyoming, we have a statewide faculty alliance, and there are members from faculty from all 7 community colleges that serve on this alliance. And the alliance reports to the Community College Commission about issues that are relevant to all the community colleges. The #1 issue that they're working on right now, I happen to serve on the alliance, is concurrent enrollment. And we have expressed our concerns to the commission and others about concurrent enrollment. We get a little bit of pushback. And I understand the other side of this is that it's really important for high school students to get a college class under their belt if we want to encourage them to go on to college. The issue that the Alliance has is that in many cases, the faculty at the high school doesn't have the same credentials, and they don't always, there's no assurance that they teach to the same course competencies and that students don't come out with those course competencies. And so this is a tough issue because you can see both sides. I want to know where you stand and how you would advocate being a chief academic officer at this institution for that stance.
Concurrent enrollment is a phenomena that's spreading nationwide. It's certainly even addressed now by the Higher Learning Commission in terms of standards and making sure that content is equivalent. My position is that we need to collaborate and cooperate and use all the tools available to us with our folks out there in the high schools. And so if we're going to have students who are concurrently enrolled and coming into our institution, we need to know who's prepared them and what resources have been available and what they know. Now, the only way I see to do that is to do it collaboratively. In other words, have groups of faculty from here, I know it's an extra burden, but have maybe some folks on committee working with select high schools and identifying what are your credentials, what is it that you know, or do you have a master's degree, do you have those 18 credit hours? And if not, are there opportunities for alternative strategies, maybe using technology for you to teach that? The review of syllabi is critical in this aspect because they have to have that common content. What about the textbooks? Are they the same? What does the course outline look like over, let's say, a 2-semester thing versus a condensed college semester? I mean, is it being delivered properly? So those are all things that I think require gatherings. They require monitoring, deciding who and what is going to be monitored. And they require technology. That is an issue where I am now, and it's not an easy solution, particularly when there's pressure to do it at the state level and people saying, our kids want to have this here. You got to let them have this. This is not fair. You know, blah, blah, blah. They have it over there. Why can't we have it here? I think one of the solutions we've come up is to use lecture capture. And this is how we're doing that, is we're taking our faculty on our campus who are credentialed and qualified in those areas, and they are being paid, I'm paying them out of my budget, a stipend to develop a integrity lecture capture curriculum with what we would say are the selected books and the material which we believe fits the bill. It has to be of that level. So they develop that, and then it's used by our various partners out there in the concurrent enrollment world, and if they're, let's say, not qualified, let's say you're trying to teach geoscience, geology, and a person has a background in nursing or something, and they don't have 18 credit hours anywhere near that in the proper STEM program, what we do in that case is we present the lecture capture as an option, transmitted from our campus to theirs with appropriate technology, of course, and there is a person who monitors, who's a faculty member, who we train and we evaluate in terms of what they're doing, and they guide the course from that end, but we deliver the content. That's a solution, but it's a very difficult problem. It takes a lot of cooperation, not only from the community college associations themselves and the high schools and the instructors, but from the state. Because if you have to say no, you have to have people understanding why you're saying no, and that, in fact, you're cheating the students by allowing these things to go on just to say that this is a college credit, when in fact it doesn't measure up.
Along those lines, are you willing to be the heavy hand to tell the high schools, if they're not credentialed properly, but these classes are occurring, and the students are getting credit for a college course, and they're being cheated, as you say, are you willing to be the heavy hand to say, this is unacceptable, we cannot do this anymore?
I don't come in as the heavy hand. That's the heavy hand of last resort. We can edit it, all right? What I would want to do first is come in and talk to them openly about, and hey, I'll go talk to anybody about anything. That's the great thing about anthropologists. They have no shame. I'll just, you got to go to the bar and hang out with these guys. Okay, no problem. I'll do it. Whatever the job takes, I'll go and do it. And I've been in some strange places, you can believe me, in the last, 25 years, in the Philippines in particular. So you go out and you talk to them. You engage. You have a discourse. You tell them these are our expectations. These are the deficits and issues that we see, and you see if you can come up with a mutual solution. And those solutions might be site-specific. You might want to have one size fits all, and it may not work. But it might work, something might work here, and letting them know that you're listening, and letting them know that you have these standards, and this is a problem, and having a good rationale to explain to them, but then giving them options. And at the end of the day, if it still doesn't work, then that you mutually understand they might not like it, but it may be that some particular credit or course cannot be offered at that institution that would be credited by us. Now, the problem I have in our state, and it may be a problem here as well, is that there are multiple institutions that are playing this game. And some are less genuine than others, are ingenuous, I guess, and they're accepting credits or giving credit for things that we wouldn't. But then on the other hand, we end up in some rare cases accepting credits from students from other institutions transferring in that don't meet our standards, and we said no to. In other words, they went to somebody else. If they can't get it from A, they went to B, and B got it, and we accepted B's credits, and then we said, oh my God, what do we do? Well, it's a problem. So I would say also that requires collaboration and requires some higher order thinking with the people who are part of the statewide group and sharing solutions rather than stating the problem. Let's share solutions and let's think hard about it and see what we can come up with and engage the high school population as part of that process.
Okay, Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Henning,
Hey,
and
Cindy.
I am the Exercise Science Program Director, and I also teach in the Exercise Science area.
Cool. You're my kind of people.
It's an air-conditioned building. It's really not that cool. But
Oh,
it
it's not
works.
cool? On air conditioning.
But
Okay.
my question is, how do you see your role in relationship to our new Vice President of Student Services, and how do you work with that person to continue to move our college forward?
Excellent question, and I can, I guess, preface it by describing the relationship I have with the person who is in that role where I presently serve. We talk every single day. We discuss overlap. I'm on the Enrollment and Outreach Committee, which he heads. He's on the Academic Leadership Council, which I head. So we cross the streams all the time. We're constantly talking about benefits for students. I fully believe an academic's job doesn't start at the beginning and the end of a class. It extends outside the classroom, into the social service environment, out into the community, into the activities of the 35-plus organizations you have for students here every single day, where faculty are student advisors, for clubs, for organizations, and that's a critical component of that student's education, that soft skill development. You know, as many people have said, what gets you your job is your credential. What keeps you your job is your soft skills, right? And where do you learn those? Through activities with others. You develop leadership, you develop the ability to work in groups, you develop oral skills and communication skills. You just have fun and live. That's an important part of the college experience. So I think the collaboration with that person is a critical part of my job. We have to be a team that exchanges and constantly communicates. Because to me, that is another half of the whole educational experience. And they have to flow together as much as possible if we can integrate those. That's why I'm a firm believer in experiential education. You know, I think every class should have an experiential component, whether it's algebra or reading or whatever it is. And coming up with ways to cross the streams between the classroom and what happens experientially. That's another thing that can be of great benefit by working carefully with the Vice President of Student Affairs. Very important component. So I'm all for that collaboration. To me, that's consummately important. That is the most important, besides the faculty and the president, that's the most important person for me to collaborate with and communicate with on this campus.
We offer a variety of types of courses on campus, face-to-face, hybrid, online, condensed video, different courses. How do you assure that the quality of education and the integrity of our campus is upheld in all of those types of courses?
The question has to do with teaching in different modalities and looking at the use of technology versus the standard versus all the other ways to do it. I think the way to test for that is in the outcomes. Have they learned it? Are the student learning outcomes consistent? How is the course content? Is it also being delivered and delivered effectively? Are the students satisfied with what they got? If you look at, for example, their CAP scores, are they ready and prepared if they've taken a variety of courses online or hybrid or in whatever format? So I think in the outcomes you do that, but you also want to do it in the front end with faculty who are teaching in these diverse ways and with the IT people who are delivering it in these diverse ways. Those conversations have to happen early and often as you look at syllabi, you look at content, you look at course duration, you look at delivery rates, you look at withdrawal failure rates across the curriculum, and you look at the grading process in those different venues. Those are all very, very important. Some students are not equipped intellectually because of their past experiences to jump in and take an online course or courses. Some do much better in that face-to-face interaction. So knowing that and knowing your student body is also a good way to do that. But in terms of asking that question, I think it's working with the faculty, with the content, with the syllabi, and making sure that they're consistent. You have the same student learning outcomes, and then when you're testing to it, you can measure the rubrics of whether or not they've actually learned it. We now are starting to get, because of the time that these things have been running, data which is clearly demonstrating that the online experience as an educational option can be equally effective as a classroom experience, and in some cases more effective, which is something kind of shocking. I got a friend of mine who doesn't want to teach anthropology online. How can you not interact with people to teach about culture? Well, I've been teaching it online for years, not recently, but I do that by having them do oral history projects where they have to go out and I give them a series of questions and they have to interview a live person and talk about their life history and write it all down and then send it in as one of their final assignments. And also they have active chat rooms where they discuss major topic and issues that I put up there, and then there's this back and forth banter. That's a form of conversation. The world is not going to go back in terms of its technology. Social media is here. It's not going to go away. It's only going to become more a part of the students' lives. And they're bringing that to campus with them, so we have to make sure we address that.
Staying on that topic, what are your thoughts on offering remedial courses online? Do you have a yes, no, on the fence answer first and then expand?
No tough questions today, huh? Okay. You scratched all the tough ones out. Okay, I see. That is difficult. But there are ways to do it where you can bring students into control. My feeling on that is for students to come in who need remedial support, who may not be computer literate, at least to a high degree, maybe because they don't have a computer because they can't afford one, like in the Ozarks, that you have to be careful, that you need to, when you advise students, find out what it is, in fact, that they're ready for. Because some of them are just not ready to jump in and do it that way, particularly if they're developmental. You know, we test for all of those things and we place them. So, yeah, what we're in fact doing in cases in our school is, again, back with the math situation, is we are providing computer-assisted ways for them to learn. But I think in terms of remedial and putting them, there is a lot of literature that's coming out now on that, you know, as we're just beginning to discover it because it's now spread into that population. But the fact is, I think you have to be very careful depending upon how the students are prepared and how it's delivered. Because then it gets back to the question of how do you know whether they've learned this or not, and what kind of things are going on in terms of quality control, testing, et cetera, with students who have these problems. And that's an issue that we all have to look at in terms of quality control, particularly from a standpoint of assessment and reaccreditation processes, such as with AQUIP. You have to be prepared to defend what you're doing. And so that takes careful thought. And I would want to work carefully with the faculty and the resources here to come up with a strategy to do that. That would be fit for this particular region and this student body.
Thank you. I'll stay on that topic of online distance learning. I've got another question here that was sent in previously. Are you willing to take a close look, if you were to be selected for this position, at how we do distance learning and do so in your first year, including the selection and support of our LMS, Learning Management System, composition and selection of the distance learning team, compensation, oversight, and direction of initiatives? That's a loaded question there, so.
So I can just answer it, yes? Yes. Well, that was easy. What's
And
the
if you
next?
need some background, we've talked a little bit, but
Yeah.
we currently have, for our distance learning, we have a director of distance learning.
Mhm.
We have one full-time instructional designer.
Mhm.
And then we have a team of faculty part-time instructional designers, which I happen to be one of them. Val is another one, which we are compensated with release time, which usually means we're overloaded. And,
Of course.
and so that was kind of put into place several years back. And are you willing to look at that model and come up with some alternatives or suggestions?
Well, that goes back to the answer. The answer is yes. And in fact, I've been doing that over the last 6 months in our parent institution with, you know, our distance learning coordinator and team, and thinking about ways in terms of the the LMS, how is that going to be delivered? That has to be continued, if not strengthened. I'm willing to look at that early on. If it, in fact, is an academic and consensus priority, top down, bottom up, and let's do it, because distance learning online is not going to go away. Given where you are in the nature of your student body, it's only going to probably intensify. And as more and more people get adept at delivering, you know, pedagogically in that fashion, it's going to become more and more important in the future. So if we're not going to fall behind, it's best that we stay ahead. And we do that by putting resources where they're needed. And I think that's one of the areas we're going to need resources to be focused.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is
Good
Paula
morning.
Badgett, and I'm a librarian here. and I'm also currently on the Student Learning Assessment Committee. And I was just curious, in your idea or vision of a comprehensive or integrated model of student learning assessment at this institution or any, what do you see as the role of faculty and what do you see as the role of administration?
Okay, a comprehensive student learning system, the role of faculty and the role of administration is the question. The assessment. Assessment is something that has to happen all the time, everywhere. And administration has to be kept informed of outcomes, summarized, encapsulated. Faculty, as on the front line, who are delivering the learning outcomes, who must apply the rubrics and then be able to use them to improve student learning, have to know what they're doing. And not only do they have to know what they're doing, they have to know why. Why do we have to do this anyway? I mean, it's a big question because it's an added activity, isn't it? 20 years ago, assessment, what's that? You know, we just teach and then we grade them, right? That's assessment, we're done. But, you know, the whole thing about what is actually happening in terms of that educational product, and driven from Washington and now from all corners of the globe, requires that we deal with this, and it's ongoing. So I want to make sure that there are plenty of resources available for faculty, that they have time to learn. If we have technological support, that the IT people are directly involved. Instructional designers are critical in this aspect. But the leadership of where we're going to go, what kind of software we're going to buy, what rubrics are going to be put in place, that has to be supported by and at least clearly understood by administration. I need to be informed as to what rubrics are being used in Algebra 1 and how they're going to result in the desired topical outcomes and how those also support the general educational goals. I need to understand that. The person at top needs to understand that. I don't believe the administration can divorce itself from the responsibility of comprehension of assessment. In fact, we have to support it, we have to talk about it, we have to encourage it, we have to provide resources for it, and support the faculty because, as we know with the external world, we are trying to continuously improve. That's our CIP, continuous improvement performance. And you've carried out some things like this quality committee, QC is now in place. It's part of that process. And there are other things that are involved with assessment that you have in place and with your AQUIP. So I have to understand that. I have to support you and provide the resources. But the faculty need to know that it has to be done. And if they can't figure out how to do it or they're having trouble closing the loop, they need to be provided support so they can understand that. That could include bringing people in from the outside, doing assessment workshops on campus, sending people to Chicago or whatever to the national meetings, and spreading it larger so more and more of the people are involved, are understanding it, and are clearly using it in a way that we can all agree to.
I'm probably going to regret this, but I'd
No bad question.
like to do a follow-up question here, following Paula's. It seems to me that on this campus, and this is just my personal opinion, that assessment here on this campus is just all about doing it. There's not a lot of focus on actually using it. If you've been around a while, go back and look at the HLC webpage, say 10 years ago, and they're very, very explicit. Assessment should drive the basic decision-making processes in an institution. You go to the HLC website now, it's all about do it, have a hug, and let's just move on. And it's just collecting data for to collect data. And I'm wondering if I'm missing the point here, or if you would respond to that for me.
So the question, to hug or not to hug? Yes, that is the question. Hugging is good in the proper context, I guess. I think you're right, but then there's more to it than that. When you look at the new credentials that they finally decided on with HLC, a lot of the same elements that were there before are there. They're just in a different format, and they're condensed and, bulletized. instead of these long lists of things like that. And it's like the checkbox phenomena. Oh, we do that. Yes, we do that. We're done, we're done, we're done, we're done. And then you're okay. When you pass, you get a flag and you get to sit on your haunches for the next 10 years and not worry. But that's not the way it is anymore, because assessment is becoming more and more front and center. They shorten these cycles. They're now checking up on us like 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. It's become much more of an external issue, and an issue that's also going to drive funding. So we have to be aware of it. But I think that the best assessments are ones that we feel comfortable with doing. I know that there are criteria that you have to address. You know, once you get those in there, what are you doing in your classroom and doing that you can do better and capturing? You don't have to do and report on everything all the time, everywhere. But what you need to do is think about continuous improvement, and you might select certain learning outcomes this year and focus on those and then some next year. But we have to internalize it so it makes sense to us, and it's important that we can use it as a tool. If we can't see any sense in it, like you described, and we're simply going through the motions, then it is kind of an exercise in doing stuff. It's not really having the utility where you bring that back in and you see effective change. And that is going to be part of my job, to understand that and see how we can imagine that, because as a change agent, if I'm in fact going to serve as part of my job description, I need to understand how we're using this and whether it's having an impact. Because again, you know, the reporting requirements are one thing, but what are we doing for ourselves? What are we doing for our students? Is assessment any good at all? We have to answer these basic questions. And if we can answer those, then they'll start leading towards something that we're comfortable with and that we can do. And you know what? It might not be perfect, and it might not be finished. And you know what? It doesn't have to be. And it might not be comprehensive, and it might not cover everybody, as long as we're in the trenches and we're getting there. That's, in fact, what they want to see. They want to see that we have a process, we are working on it, we have goals, and we're heading towards them, and we're thinking reflectively and bringing those back in and trying to see how we can improve. That's all. That's what it is. And so I think a lot more thought has to be turned on. This has got to be primarily about us, not about them telling us what we should be.
How do you get the faculty to embrace that idea? If, as Dave mentioned, if it's part of the process, it's not finished, I mean, that's our biggest
I could think of a
pushback.
song right now I could break out into, but I won't go there. So, you have to have passion for assessment. You have to be the used car salesman in somewhat. You have to convince people that this works, and you have to show them examples, concrete examples, that they can relate to, and say, "Wow, boy, that really worked. I can see how I can use that in my classroom." So providing tools, sharing information, cross-fertilizing rubrics, asking what other people are doing at other institutions, using the state association to find out what's happening across the board. These are important ways to get those tools, get those ideas, and get them flowing and circulating. People have to be excited about something like assessment because it's hard to do and it's complex, and if they're not at least somewhat intrigued and willing and motivated, then how are you going to do that? Now, how do I do that? I sing, I dance, I come in with a long nose like Scaramouche. I'll do anything, to get people's attention. No cheerleader outfits, I promise. And no scary clown outfits either. I don't like those things. So, but you've got to be engaging, and bringing in people who are doing it professionally is also very helpful. I know some people who are engaged in this, and they're very entertaining and engaging, and they have a lot of great ideas. And they do it in a way that makes sense, where we can connect to. So you have to be able to connect to it. And my job is to facilitate that connection. It might not be perfect. It might not happen for everybody at all times, but you have to try, and you have to keep at it because it's not going away.
Very good. We have a live email question that just came in. This is from Kristen Abraham, who is an English instructor, and this is kind of along the lines of Roz's scenario earlier, but a little bit different context. She says, I teach creative writing classes and composition classes that incorporate classic and contemporary film and literature. At times, I ask students to read and or watch texts that could be controversial in a number of ways, politically, ethically, etc. Let's say a film I chose to show in my class has created serious controversy among the students in my class, which has sparked an article in Wingspan and is now garnering community attention. You
I
have
assume
been,
that's your student newspaper, okay.
yes,
all right,
that's
okay.
Wingspan, who's streaming this live.
Yeah.
You have been contacted by some concerned students and community members who are complaining that I shouldn't be allowed to show the film as part of my writing class, which students are required to take. What is your response to these complaints? Again, that's Kristen Abraham, English faculty.
No easy questions today. Well, maybe next week. I'll have easier questions. The question is that you're showing a controversial film, and some of the students, I guess we can create the scenario, object to its content. And that has gone out, it's gone to Wingspan, it's gone out to the public. Maybe some of their parents have gotten involved and are concerned citizens and calling the campus and saying, why are you doing this? You're exposing my kids to this. I would want to have a conversation with the faculty person involved. I would want to talk about the content and what they were trying to communicate with that content. And clearly want to know what is the teaching moment? What's happening in that classroom using that material that's part and critical to that course? All those questions answered, I would want that person to state those questions, respond to those questions, and so they're clearly understood. And maybe have done that before the film was shown and let the students know that some of you might find this controversial, yada, 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 but here's why we're showing it. Here's what you should get out of it. This is why I'm using this as a teaching tool. And then you're done. And then you stand on it, and you stand with that faculty person. If that's controversial, that's part of the educational process. Controversial things happen all the time beyond the walls of every institution that we are forced to deal with in the media 24/7. You know, it's part of the nature of the world. It's part of the skill set of being able to talk about, defend, discuss, or even disagree with such events and such happenings. And students need to have those skills developed as well. So you might, in fact, have a forum afterwards and have them do pro-con as to what's wrong with this film, or why would this be a bad thing, or why is this not a good educational tool. Discuss the merits of it as part of a class exercise. Those are some suggestions I would have on how to deal with that.
Thank you. Anyone else? We've got about 10, 12 minutes or so.
Yes, ma'am. Mary, right? Right.
And one of our applicants, and I can't remember if it was you or someone else, referred to adjuncts as the ugly stepsister. So I'm here today as Sister Mary.
Wasn't
Anyway,
me.
How do you discuss a little bit about the care and feeding of adjuncts and how you get them more involved in what's going on in the campus?
Mary, I'm sure we have lots of, if I was here, we'll have lots of great conversations. The adjuncts, the per course instructors are part of our world. It's a financial issue. It's an issue of student numbers and body. It's an issue that has to do with delivery of quality education. The adjuncts have to be part of who we are. Things that we've done, for example, what I've done in the past is I have orientation sessions for adjuncts. You know, this year they're setting up a chat room open to adjuncts, focusing on that population, talking about their concerns and issues, and making sure that they feel included as part of the community of scholars and educators at that institution, and that they are respected equally by their full-time peers, the staff, the administration, and that they then, you know, are part of the team. So I believe team building is an important part of my job working with per course adjuncts, and a great deal of respect. I was a per course. When I was doing my PhD at Arizona State University, I was teaching biology for nurses at Glendale Community College. In fact, I started my career at Glendale Community College in high school teaching I was the assistant conductor of their local orchestra, and I was in high school. So I got to know what a per course was early on. I didn't get paid for it, though. It was just like community service. So it was a lot of fun, though. But I understand that this is an important part of who we are. It's not going to change. It's not going to go away. We need to do better at the care and feeding of these individuals in this population and make sure that they're part of who we are both now and in the future, because they're not going to go away, and we really need all of you. Does that answer the question?
I can tell you a book to read. It's called Beneath the Ivory Tower or something. Anyways, by a man who calls himself Professor X. He talks all about being agile.
Professor X. Okay. I will put that on. Sounds good.
Okay, any last questions here? If not, we can wrap this up, and it'll give Dr. Dyer a little bit of breathing room before his next luncheon meeting.
Thank you all very, very much.
Yes.
Muchas gracias todos.
And thank you, Dr. Dyer, for spending the morning with us and answering the questions. And thanks, everyone, for their participation today and for the last 3 days. This is very beneficial to the whole selection process. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, gang.
Thanks.